So there are obviously increasing numbers of players in a programmatic world who are involved, and obviously Condé's been actively involved in selling in a programmatic way. How does that change the nature of trying to be more transparent to the marketer about where their ads are going to appear and who's involved in serving those ads?
Sure, well, there's two things. There's a quality assurance guidelines that I actually worked on when I was part of AdMel, then Google, and then now Condé Nast. And I think that there's the concept of a direct or an indirect buyer and seller. And basically, the differences are, if you're a direct principal in a conversation, you have that contract with the buyer and with the publisher. So we do business only with direct principals, be it a DSP, be it a exchange, be it a buying team, an end company. The company has to have a direct relationship with the advertiser themselves. We don't do indirect deals.
So I guess one of the questions then becomes, is it probably worth explaining for those of you who aren't here a little bit more about the Quality Assurance Guidelines. The Quality Assurance Guidelines are a voluntary brand safety program that many of the companies that you've heard from today are part of. And those companies certify against a detailed set of guidelines around how they acquire the inventory, as Alanna talked about, what the source of it is, what sort of sites, the content that they're selling against. And that provides marketers with assurances about where their ads are actually going to appear, so that it doesn't appear next to content that they're not comfortable with. So I guess the question then becomes is, as a publisher who's involved in this and is now moving into, say, audience extension, is this become the sort of thing that publishers increasingly are going to start to look at as something that they might want to certify against as well?
Sure, definitely. We are certifying against the QAG guidelines. And we are a buyer. So most publishers in this room are also buyers. And you're buying in the marketplaces, and you're buying with publisher partners, be it within your company or outside of your company. And that does behoove us to use technology, just white ops or trust metrics. All of those things that scan URLs and look at the content and look and find the fake URLs, which are everywhere, in every marketplace, is super important for publishers as well, yes.
Okay. And I guess the question I'd then like to ask is, how is this affected by programmatic? I mean, the quality assurance guidelines are predominantly based on IOs. How do we adjust that for the programmatic world?
That's a loaded question, Carl. How do we change the world? Well, so programmatic does not have an IO, you're right. And there's different types of programmatic these days. There's the deal ID, which basically is an open market deal. The way you use that to be safe is to do an advertiser by advertiser deal ID. That's what we do. In terms of the programmatic reserved, there's still a contract or an IAB T&C that you sign when you're doing a deal via iSocket or Google or what have you. If you're reserving programmatically, there's still contract in place. So as long as those terms are clear and provide safety, I guess, between the indirect and direct piece of the business, that's, again, another step in the right direction.
Okay, well, thank you. I think I kind of want to end this session by really just on transparency and brand safety with a bit of a call to action. There have been 29 digital companies who have already certified against the quality assurance guidelines. A number of you are in the process of certifying against those. And in it, we have the kind of building blocks of a wider compliance program that many others are going to talk about after us. But I think in particular with the programmatic world, we need to continue to think about what transparency and brand safety looks like in a programmatic world. So I've got one last question, I guess, for you around that, which is around how do we deal with transparency around the bidding process, transparency around inventory, and even transparency around fees when it comes to programmatic?
Sure. So I think the marketplaces, and I came from an exchange. I used to work for Right Media back in the day. There are definitely different levels of transparency, be it inventory, be it buyer, and then be it the business model that is attached to the transaction. And so I think there's a couple of things, and the QAG does cover a lot of this, but there is continuing need for an evolution on the transparency side and the business side of the equation. I think working with the IAB and the trade organizations to figure out what it means to conduct business within these markets in a safe manner, because we have evolved. We are mature now, which is great. It's good to be mature, but the problem with maturity is you actually have to think about details that you didn't think about before. So I think working through that this year, the new iteration of QAG will help with those things.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Alanna, for joining us on the stage around transparency and brand safety.